Welcome to the Series 1 End Thoughts video, part 2, I guess. I have already covered episodes 1 through 6 in my mid-series thoughts video, and so in this one I'm going to cover the second half of Series 1. So, first of all, I'm just going to say apologies for how I look today. Normally I try to be a little bit more put together, but I have a limited amount of time to record, so I didn't really have time to deal with my hair and my makeup and stuff, so it is what it is. I feel like I say this. I'm just closing some windows and pulling up my notes here. I feel like I say this in every podcast episode that I do, because I've had several podcasts. I don't think this is going to be very long, or it's at least not going to be as long as the first one was. But every time I say that in a podcast, the episode always ends up being like 2 or 3 times the length that I expect it's going to be. So that might be the case here. But let's hope not. So I feel like this is going to be the case because in the first half of Series 1, I was learning everything. Like I was getting to know everything about the show, the characters, how the episodes are put together, like literally everything about this entire world, that the show exists in. So I had a lot more to process and a lot more to basically have thoughts on. So now here in the second half, we've kind of gotten a lot of that out of the way. And so I just don't feel like I have quite as many thoughts, but I do definitely still have some. So just like in the first video, we are going to go episode by episode. Yeah, I'm just going to share some things that came up for me, as I was editing it and then rewatching it again for this video here. So episode 1.7, The Long Game. I had quite a few people explain to me the whole, like, he's your boyfriend thing or whatever, because I was really confused on that. And the reason I was confused, so I do just want to clarify this. It was very clear to me when the doctor said, he's your boyfriend, that he was joking. That's the doctor's sense of humor. Like, that all made complete sense to me. It was Rose's response of, like, not anymore. And it was just so deadpan that it seemed serious. It didn't seem like a joke response back. And so I thought I, like, accidentally played the wrong episode, or, like, maybe, some time had passed between episodes and they had actually, like, started dating or whatever. So that's where that confusion came from. It was clear the doctor was joking at first. Like, I took it as a joke at first, but it was Rose's response. So for me, the joke, like Rose's response back, just didn't really land. It didn't read as a joke to me, so I didn't get it that way. So that's what the deal with that was. One thing I liked about this episode, and I did mention it a little bit, was that I really liked how it sort of, not fully, but sort of explained money and how they pay for things, because I have been wondering about that kind of stuff. And I would love to find out more about those, like, details. So I know we've already addressed, like, languages, how, Rose especially can understand and communicate, with all these different species and races and all this stuff, like where they have different languages that they use. So that's already been explained, but money hadn't been. And it's just stuff like that. Like I commented before about the TARDIS, how I wanted to know more things. Like, does it have a kitchen? Which now I feel like it does, because there was a comment in, I think, and I only picked it up just tonight when I was rewatching these for this video. It was in, I think, in The Empty Child, where they said something about how, like, having to come back to Earth to get milk or something. So, like, I want to know about, like, does the doctor sleep? Like, are there bedrooms in the TARDIS? Like, where does Rose get all of her clothes? It's all of those little tiny details that I want to know more about, which I realize probably nobody else really cares about. But I did like getting the explanation of money in this one and how. And again, like, is it only like that on Satellite 5? Where you get those credits or whatever. And he had the thing that always reminds me of a harmonica, the thing that he got for, like, unlimited credit or whatever. I don't know, but I want to know more about that stuff. I did miss the Bad Wolf reference in this one, how it was Bad Wolf TV, because, like, I was in the middle of, like, recognizing the face of Bo or whatever the name is. So I was distracted by that I didn't catch that reference. I caught most of them, I think, though. I have another note here for if you don't watch this show, especially this episode, with headphones on, you're missing out, because especially the scene with the very first spike in it, The sound design is excellent in this show. And so in that scene, as you're listening to it, like the sound is traveling. And you really and I use crappy headphones. Like seriously, these are, I mean, they're Samsung, but I got them off of Groupon for like $10 for a pack of 5 or something ridiculous. So like they're not good headphones. And even with crappy headphones, like it still sounded so good because they put a lot of attention into the sound design aspect. And this episode is one where I especially noticed it. So again, if you're not wearing headphones, do it. Simon Pegg. I was really excited to see him in this episode because I love him. But I have to agree with some of the other comments about how, which I forget now what the comment specifically said, but basically how like he was underutilized in this. And I tend to agree. I feel like Simon Pegg deserved a better character, deserved a better part. Not that this was a bad one. And I think he did a fantastic job with it. I would have liked to have seen him in a different role, I guess. I don't know. I did like seeing him play a bad guy, though, because I haven't seen Simon Pegg play a bad guy before I watched this, so it was nice. Okay, the Adam Rose scene where he says that, you know, she'd rather be, because he says he wants to go off to the observation deck or whatever, and she asks if, you know, he wants her to go with him, and he's like, you know, it's okay, you'd rather be with the doctor anyways, and it would take a better man than me to come between you two. I loved that scene, or at least that little part of that scene. And Rose's lack of a response there, like, said everything. And I especially love it because it was an acknowledgement, an out loud verbal acknowledgement of like what we collectively as the audience and anyone who is around the two of them knows, but that Rose and the doctor haven't like directly addressed with each other. And so it was nice to basically have her be confronted with that, where like she couldn't, you know, basically like pretend like it wasn't happening or whatever. And so that was nice. That was nice to have that where it's like, bam, in your face, like, no, you would rather be with him. And I'd like, it would take a better man than I to come between you two. And it made her uncomfortable. And I liked that because it just was interesting to watch her reaction to it. And I want to say, like, obviously it's been, or I think it's been pretty obvious that I have, and I know a lot of people hate this word, shipped these two a little bit. I love Rose and the doctor together. Christopher's version, I've said from, I think the pilot episode, they have amazing chemistry together. But I also want to clarify that, like, I don't necessarily see their relationship as like a romantic thing. Yes, I obviously got very excited when they kissed in the finale. But I feel like their connection and their bond and their relationship is something different. It's more than friendship. It's more than companions. It's more than something romantic. Like what they have is just so unique and different. And maybe he has these types of relationships with other companions. I don't know. Obviously, this is only the first series I have seen of NuWho. Of Classic Who, I've only watched An Unearthly Child. So definitely don't have any of that there. So like maybe he does have these really intense relationships with pretty much every companion, but at least in this moment, what I know, it seems like what he has with Rose is unique, and their relationship goes beyond every normal type of relationship. It's just something very, very different, and that's what I love about it. So I do have to say that I'm not going to say this episode was my like second to last or second to least favorite, but this storyline was my second to least favorite. So pretty much anything to do with this Levine, I don't like. I just don't like. I don't like the farting aliens. I don't want anything to do with that. I hope they don't come back up again. I'm ready to be done with them. But after this Levine, it was this one. I didn't really care a whole lot for this one. But I will say at the time, I just thought this felt like a filler episode a little bit. And obviously now I know that that's not the case. Now I know that this was an important episode because it set up at least the setting. Well, actually more than that. It set up a lot of things in the final 2 episodes. So while I may have been a little harder on the episode during the reaction, and not liking it and not thinking it was all that great, or at least not thinking it was all that interesting. I now know like it served an important purpose. So I have come around to the episode, I guess. But I mean, if I were to go back and do a rewatch of this first series, I wouldn't rewatch this one. I would skip it. So there was a moment that I'm not sure. I don't really think anybody took it the wrong way. I just feel like I didn't communicate it very well. I was reacting to pretty much the end of the episode when everything was wrapped up and the doctor was saying he was leaving and he was walking towards Adam. And it was his first time confronting Adam, like after everything. And I kept saying, like, I don't like this shot. I don't like this shot. And it wasn't that I didn't like the actual shot itself. In fact, I loved the shot because it did exactly what it was supposed to do. It made me really uncomfortable. It made me feel like I was Adam and the doctor was walking at me, super pissed. So it was a very, very good shot in that sense. So when I said I don't like this shot, I really meant like, oh no, oh God, like what's going to happen? I'm uncomfortable right now. So I did just want to clarify that a little bit. I did actually really like the way that they did that. Okay, and then the last thing I'm going to talk about for episode 7 is Adam. Obviously, in episode 6, I was very fond of Adam. I really liked the character of Adam. I was really excited that he was going to be joining them. And then episode 7 happened. And I get now because of conversations, like we needed an example of a bad companion and what that looked like and how not everyone is meant to be a companion. Not everyone is like Rose, which we already got that aspect of it, I guess, with Mickey. It's very clear he's not like Rose. Like he doesn't really want to have any part of that. But then we have Adam, who very much wanted it a little too much. And he was a bad companion for other reasons. So I get that. It was nice having all that. And I have been informed of the actor and the stuff that happened, outside of the show. I'm not going to talk about that here, but, I get it. I get why a lot of people don't like the character of Adam now. But I am still upset that we don't have Adam. Adam pissed me off. I don't like the character of Adam anymore. I am glad that he is not there, but I'm also still a little upset that he's not there because I feel like there was just a lot of potential with that character and some storylines. And so I was really excited to see what was going to happen with that character. And it felt like build up, only to be like let down like right away, immediately, and it's over. So it just kind of felt like there wasn't a whole lot of payoff with Adam. And so that was a little bit frustrating. But we ended up getting Captain Jack, which I like now, actually. So again, I kind of get it. We have a better companion now, and we can't have a bunch of companions running around. So those are my thoughts on Adam. I was really excited for the potential, really disappointed and angry with him in this episode. And I still am a little sad about the loss of the potential in that character. But I'm not really sad about the loss of, that character specifically. So I hope that makes sense. Okay. Episode 1-8, Father's Day. Obviously, this was a rough one for me. It did hit me on a personal level, and I did go into it a little bit at the end of the video. I'm in a much better space to talk about it right now. So yes, when I was in college, my father was diagnosed with prostate cancer, and it was the most aggressive form his doctor had ever seen. He was not given very long. Thanks to my suggestion, he looked into a more holistic approach, holistic treatments and things. And he fortunately had the means to do that because his insurance wouldn't pay for it. And he credits it with saving his life. He does still have cancer. He has gone back and forth. There have been some very, very scary times. He did end up going through radiation, and there are supposed to eventually be complications from that. At one point in time, it was very likely he was not going to be able to, walk me down the aisle at my wedding, and he wasn't going to be around very long. But somehow he has beat the odds for the time being. But, we kind of live with the knowledge that could change absolutely any day. And it does change. It does change a little bit. He goes through periods where he comes out of remission and he has to take his treatment a little bit more seriously again. It goes back and forth. So it has been a very long emotional journey where we have almost lost him several times. And so seeing Rose without her father in this episode and like a lot of the stuff surrounding a wedding, you know what I mean? That too. It brought up a lot of not so great experiences, a lot of fear that I had around all of those things and potentially losing him and imagining what it was going to be like to not have him around. So yeah, all of that was kind of rough. But now I also know, thanks to you, that it was personal for Christopher as well. And I believe I had someone tell me that that's why it was like written to the episode that he disappeared for a while, that he, basically was eaten so that he could spend time with his own father. And that just like, I already loved him anyways. That was pretty clear, but that just took it to a whole different level. Like I have so much more. I mean, I already had a lot, but I have so much more respect for him as an actor now to be able to do that episode and still turn out the performance that he did with what was going on in his personal life. Okay, yeah. So I have a note here. I feel like the beginning of the episode is an example of the doctor being willing to like do anything for Rose. He is not stupid. He knew that this was probably not a good idea. He knew that something could go wrong. He knew that Rose is impulsive and not the most careful. So I feel like given his choice, like if he had his way, he would not have let her go back to this time. But he also just wants to make her happy. And this was an example of that because he was like, okay, we'll do it. Even though everything inside him was probably like, this is a bad idea. When they went back, I can't fault Rose for saving her dad's life. In that moment, I like to think I would have done the same thing, actually, even though it wasn't the smart decision, even though it led to a lot of problems. I don't think I could do that. So yeah, I have no problem with her saving her dad because it makes total sense to me. Oh, yeah, I mentioned it during the reaction, but I want to mention it here as well because I really, really appreciate it. And it just goes to, one of the things that this show does brilliantly. I love the change in the music when it switches to a shot, like, so it's Rose on the street or whatever, and then it switches to the shot of the doctor right after she saves him. And there's just like that change. And it just so brilliantly conveys the change in tone and emotion and like how upset he is with her right then. Because you have this like moment where it's like, oh my God, she saved her dad. Like, that's so great. And then it goes over to the doctor and you get that music change and you're like, oh, no, it's not great. Oh, this is bad. Oh, this is really bad. And so I love that the show can do that, with such simple elements. Like, it's not this whole big thing. It's just a quick change in the music and a quick shot over to him and him, not really doing a lot with his expression, but doing enough that it conveys exactly what it needs to. All of that is great. And I love it. Oh, I loved the twist with the little boy being Mickey. I did not see it coming. It caught me totally off guard, which I love. And it also makes me appreciate Mickey and Rose's relationship a little bit more. Like, he's been in her life basically, I mean, I'm assuming literally since she was born. Because, I mean, he was all dressed up, so he was going to attend the wedding, and Jackie called him by name. So I feel like Jackie knew Mickey. And so, like, they grew up together. Like, and I think that's kind of awesome. And I understand now why they can't really let each other go. Their bond goes a lot deeper than just, like, them dating for a little while. So that was nice. And I also didn't realize, which funnily enough, I didn't realize it when I watched the episode with the initial time for the reaction. I didn't realize it when I edited the episode, either for Patreon or for YouTube, because I edit them separately. I only realized it tonight when I was reviewing these for these notes. It only clicked then that Mickey is so much older than Rose, because Rose was a baby. And Mickey was I don't know children's ages. I mean, he was walking and talking, so several years, I assume 4, 5, 3. I don't know when you talk. I don't know anything about kids. But I didn't realize he was like multiple years older. I just assumed they were the same age. So that was, I mean, it doesn't really mean anything, but it was interesting. For me, the star of this episode, hands down, is Billy. She sold every emotion in this episode, and it's like because of her that the episode impacted me so much. Because I've mentioned this before, I relate to Rose a lot. I can see a lot of Rose in myself. We have a lot of similarities. And I don't know, just like hearing her talk to her dad just made it a lot more intense for me and allowed me to connect to the moments a lot more. And she just was like breaking my heart throughout this entire episode. And her voice cracks. Like she is so good about this, which this has happened all the way back in. I can remember it in episode 2. There's a scene where they're talking about, I think it's like the Earth. Yeah, it's like when the Earth blew up and she's like, no one saw it go or something. She delivers lines in a way that's just so fantastic because you can hear the emotion in it. And literally like her voice like cracks and breaks and stuff in just the right places. A really good example of that in this episode is when he says, you know, who am I, love? And she responds with my daddy, and her voice like breaks when she says it. It's like going to make me cry right now. Yeah, her delivery of that line especially, like, oh, it always gets me like right in the heart, right in the feels. So yeah, Billy was definitely the star in this one. I will say this episode confuses me probably the most out of all of them, only because I think about it too hard in terms of like the time travel aspect and like, why is this a bad idea? You know, why can they not save her dad, but, you know, they can do all of these other things in different time periods, and it's fine, I guess. I mean, they do have consequences, and we do see that in this episode, but even later, you know, we get the consequences of him, you know, doing the events of episode 7, The Long Game, like how just shutting the news off changed everything. But this is one where I'm like, wait a minute, why did this one turn out to be this big deal? Which I get that it was, I think they kind of addressed that by saying like there were 2 sets of them there at one time and then something changed. And so I think that caused the events of this episode to happen rather than like just like a chain reaction of things, I guess. I don't know. This is one where I have to be like, okay, just stop thinking. Just stop thinking and go with it. Because yeah, it seems like sometimes it's a big deal and sometimes it's not. And I'll drive myself crazy trying to figure out which is which. So I'm just going to go with whatever the show tells me is happening in that episode. Episode 9, The Empty Child. Hands down, the creepiest episode of this first series. I did not like the mannequins. I am forgetting the name of them right now. I know them. It's just not in my brain at the moment. Anyways, those were definitely creepy, but this was so creepy. And I mean, that was very obvious as I was watching it, but I have to emphasize it because that's what stands out for me about this episode. The part with Rose at the beginning kind of annoys me a little bit, to be honest. In the moment, I think I was like laughing with it, but like the more I think about it, it doesn't make sense to me. Her like wanting everything to be all Spock all of a sudden, and like things basically just not being like exciting enough for her, flashy enough for her, cool enough. Like it just seems to come out of nowhere. I don't know. Like, are they implying that she's like getting bored with what they've been doing? I don't know. It just seemed really weird. And it seems like it was only put in the episode to serve the purpose of her like being so enamored with Captain Jack because he has these flashy things. And he has like, you know, a certain style about him, which okay, that's fine. But I don't really like when things are put in an episode, like just specifically to like serve this purpose later on. I want them to feel organic in the moment. And this show usually does a pretty good job with that. But this didn't feel that way. This felt a little bit forced. And I didn't really like it. So that is what it is. It did also seem odd that Rose and the Doctor spent so much time apart in this episode. and neither one of them really cared. I mean, he went looking for her as soon as he left the club, like right away, but then he got distracted by the phone call and then like basically didn't say anything about her the whole rest of the time. I mean, this is a pretty big deal. Like, there are bombs literally being dropped everywhere. Like, and he just doesn't even pay any attention to the fact that she's gone. So that seemed odd to me as well. And then the actress, actually, there were a few. The actress playing Nancy was amazing. She did such a good job in these episodes. Such a good job. But also the kid playing Jamie was great as well. Because like, he's this little kid, but he still was able to, and especially like the part I'm referring to is in the house after Nancy's gotten all the kids out, after they, ate some food, and Jamie's at the front door and he's like reaching his hand through the mail slot and he's talking about how he's scared. And like, I was equal parts, 50-50, creeped out, but also like so heartbroken for this child at the same exact time, which are completely different emotions. And so I feel like that's a testament to like this little kid and the writing. But I mean, his delivery of it, it's both creepy and super sad at the same time. So I thought that was really good. So having seen the beginning of Classic Who, seen An Unearthly Child, now the line about the doctor like saying like, I know the feeling, when the other doctor is talking about how he, used to be a father and a grandfather and now he's nothing, and he's like, yeah, I know the feeling. Like, that makes me glad that I've started watching Classic Who. And I know a lot of people have told me to just wait, but this is why I didn't want to wait, because I want to know these little things. And this is also kind of what I was referring back to by things seeming organic, because having seen Classic Who now, hearing this line, I'm like, oh yeah, like that's actually a pretty powerful line. Like, it's really sad. He does know what it feels like to have family and then not. But having watched it the first time without having seen Classic Who, that line didn't stand out to me in a bad way. Like, it didn't seem out of place. It didn't seem forced. It didn't seem anything where I was like, why did he say that? Like, I wonder if that's a reference to Classic Who. It just felt organic in the episode. So that's what I like. And then my other thing here is I am still just as confused about Jack and his origins as I was when I watched this episode. I still don't understand. Like, so he's obviously time traveling and he's got the psychic paper and all this stuff, but he's not a Time Lord. So like, I'm confused about that. So like, who is he or what is he? Is he human? And he just so happens to have this time travel technology and like all of these other tools. What time period is he from? Is he from the future and he was traveling back in time? Is he from Rose's time? Like, I don't know. And so I would really like to know all those answers, because I still don't really know what the heck Jack's deal is. And it's kind of driving me crazy. All right, so that's all for episode 9. But I mean, it ties in obviously with episode 10. Episode 10, however, I don't have much to say here, but that's because I did a little bit of a longer than normal recap in the actual video itself on this one. Excuse me. I really should have brought a drink in here with me. So one thing I did love about episode 10 was how I love that they were able to take something that was so creepy in episode 9, this little boy, Are You My Mommy? So creepy. And without really changing anything about it. Like, it's the same actor delivering the same line in the same way. But because of the storytelling in episode 10, it takes on an entirely different meaning. And it goes from creepy to just really super sad and heartbreaking, and without the element of creepy anymore. Like in episode 9, we had that scene where it was a mixture of both. And we have that journey of creepy, mixture of both, creepy again, and then just outright heartbreaking to hear him say this line, knowing that Nancy really is his mom and he's been searching for her. And it was just so sad. So yeah, that's just another testament to the show and something that they do really well, and that they did especially well in this episode with the storytelling. I did not see that twist coming with Nancy. I fully bought in that she was his sister. And I'm actually really curious to know how old the actress was at the time that was filmed or released or whatever, because she did seem very, very young. Which, I mean, obviously they have to cast somebody who looks young because they have to sell that she's the sister and not the mom. But still, I'm curious what the actual age was there and what the age gap was. Because he said, 4 or 5 years ago was how old Jamie was. So, but I can't look it up because if I Google anything, then I will get nothing but Doctor Who stuff and I will probably get a spoiler for something. So if any of you happen to know how old the actress was when that was filmed, I would love to know. Okay, episode 11, Boomtown. So very clearly, I was obviously not pleased to see this Celine back. I also wasn't fond of her like softening up. So the bathroom scene where she finds out that the chick has a baby, and then she's getting married and she like lets her go and she's like all sad and, sitting on the toilet. I didn't really like that. Villain redemption arcs are like some of my favorite character arcs. I do love that, but I don't think that every villain needs to be redeemed. And I don't think that the Celine need to be redeemed. And so yeah, I wasn't crazy about them doing that in this. And I get that she was like playing the doctor and playing the others at the end or like in the middle, like after they caught her or whatever. But I mean, here she could have killed this woman and it would have been no big deal. She was the only one in there. So she wasn't manipulating anybody. So this seemed like it was a genuine emotion that she was going through and a genuine response to hearing this information. And I just didn't really like it. So I did talk about this in the reaction a little bit. The scene where they all walk in to the mayor's office at first. And then Jack just like comes in and like steps into his natural leadership role. And he's like, okay, here's what we're going to do. And he like lays out the whole plan. And then he like quickly realized like, oh, yeah, okay, this isn't my show. I'm not in charge here. And like he stepped back and he didn't really, he didn't really fight the doctor on it. And then the doctor just kind of went with it. That's when I started to like Jack a little bit more because obviously I didn't really like him all that much in episodes 9 and 10. But that moment there was kind of where I was like, oh, okay, maybe he's not quite what he presents himself to be. And he is capable of putting his ego aside a little bit. So that was a nice moment to have to see him like figure out his role in the group and then like settle into it and become part of the team. I did also say in the reaction, but I want to mention here again, the super close-up shots in the restaurant. I think I just said like I liked how they did those. But the reason I liked how they did them and that they did do them was because it really helped build the tension in that episode. And not only did it help build the tension, but we're in a moment where we still don't really trust her. And we're not sure that we can trust her. She seems to be saying all of these nice things, but also she just tried to basically kill the doctor 30 seconds before in their conversation. And so having that super tight close-up, it's like, okay, we're getting this little bit of information, but we can't see what else is happening. And so it just kind of adds to that whole, like, can we trust her? She's giving us this information, but is it true? And so I just thought it was a great way to film that. And then also in this episode, which is kind of my last note for it, I didn't particularly love this episode. I do love how they introduced the TARDIS being a living thing and looking into like the soul of the TARDIS. So this is another thing that felt organic to me. This obviously in the moment was just like, oh, this is cool. This is a neat way to solve this problem and get rid of her. But obviously I now know, having seen the finale, that it means a whole hell of a lot more. But it didn't feel like that in the moment, which is what I like. It felt organic. It felt like a problem that made sense in that episode, or a solution to a problem, that made sense in that episode. And it didn't feel forced. It didn't feel like are they telling us this because we need to know this later on sort of a thing. It felt completely natural, but still served a much larger purpose later on. And so that's how I like to see it done. Not the way where they just like kind of completely change something about a character for no reason and kind of out of nowhere. Okay. Episode 112, Bad Wolf. I think this episode concept, is my favorite of this first series. There are other episodes that I have liked more in terms of like overall viewing experience, but this concept I think is my favorite. I love the idea of like game shows turning deadly. That's just kind of my morbid side coming out. Not that I would actually want to watch that. I just think it's an interesting idea and like an interesting thought experiment to know that like, or to think that, eventually one day humans are just going to become so bored with entertainment that like it has to just keep escalating and getting to that point, which I realize has been done before. This isn't the first time this has come up. I mean, like look at Hunger Games and stuff like that, but which I love also, by the way. So I'm not sure what that says about me. But anyways, I did really enjoy the concept of this episode. Now I know that they weren't actually deadly. Well, I think. So we know where Rose went, but I don't know. I don't know that it ever really answered where everyone else went. Because I mean, hundreds of people, he said, hundreds of people a day would get killed, killed, disintegrated. And like, where did they all go? Did they get turned into Daleks? That's the one thing I wasn't quite sure of. So I feel like that's the case, is they would take those people and then that's what the Emperor used to create the Daleks. I could be way off on that, but that's just kind of what I assume happened. So here we go. Here's another thing where I think they took a character and just like made some really weird choices with it. And maybe, I don't know if this was in the script. I don't know if this was Billy's portrayal, but Rose's reaction during her first little bit in the Weakest Link segment kind of really bothered me. She's just like laughing and it's like she's like drunk or she's on something and it just doesn't really make any sense. Like that's not Rose's character normally. Like she's doesn't act like that in normal everyday life, and it just seemed really weird that in that moment that's how she responded. And so it just felt a little off to me, and it was just a little much and it was a little over the top. So I didn't really care for that. But also speaking of Rose, her being disintegrated really got me. Like, I knew that she was in it longer, so I knew she didn't, like, die, but I was not expecting that to happen, and so it caught me off guard, which I always enjoy. And there was a moment there where I was like, oh my God, is she, like, actually dead? And then, like, my brain clicked in and was like, no, you know that she's in more of this. So, yeah, but I will say, so Jack's reaction to that is what officially won me over. Him just like going into this just rage over losing her. Like, I loved it. I loved it because it showed that he really truly cared about her. And it wasn't just a, hey, she's hot, let's have fun sort of a thing. Like, he truly cared about her and he thought she was dead and he lost his mind. And I loved that. And then I also loved when he went into the TARDIS and he saw her jacket and he had that like sad little moment. And then he was like, nope, head in the game. So yeah, Jack's reaction to losing Rose sealed the deal for me. That's what got me from like, I don't really like this guy to like, yep, I'm on board with Jack now. Okay, the last note I have about this episode, the thing that kind of irked me about it was that it's called Bad Wolf. So like I was really excited to get in here and get all these answers about Bad Wolf, and then we got like nothing. So it just seemed like an odd name for the episode. And maybe there's something I'm missing there, but like I was expecting to get an answer or an explanation of the name and we didn't get it. And so like I was a little let down by that. All right, the finale, the parting of the ways. One moment in this that I particularly loved was after the Doctor's first chat with the Emperor. And, you know, he was the typical Doctor in that moment, you know, kind of playing it carefree and with occasional bouts of anger and a little bit of manicness, you know, just normal Doctor stuff. But then he goes back inside the TARDIS when they go to leave. And he just kind of like stands there with his forehead on the door and just like has to have a moment. I love those little moments. Again, it's something so subtle. Like it is not an over the top thing, but it just conveys so much because you can tell in that moment he is just like feeling all of it. You know, the sadness, the grief, the guilt, probably fear, overwhelm, all these different things. And it just, I like seeing those different sides. I like seeing that he can turn it on and have this bravado when he's like dealing with his adversaries. But then like in private, he can have this moment where he does feel those things. And I like getting to see those little moments. Another thing that I love, little moments, are all of like jealous looks that Rose gives Linda whenever the Doctor and Linda interact with each other. I thought that was a particularly nice touch in this episode, especially because again, this is a really intense episode. There's some heavy stuff happening. I mean, I cried for like 3/4 of it, but then you throw in those little moments there and it's just a little bit of levity to kind of help you breathe a little bit as the episode's happening. And so I appreciated that. So even though Rose's or Jack's reaction to Rose dying, being disintegrated is like the thing that won me over. I don't think I particularly realized that at the time. And so when Jack in this one died, it caught me off guard, like that I cried and that I actually cared as much as I did that he died. I didn't realize I had come to care for Jack that much, but I was definitely sad to see him go. Yeah, so my next note is that in the moment as I was watching this, I was surprised that the doctor didn't destroy the Daleks. I was surprised by that because they are such a huge threat. And he does seem to be, serve the greater purpose, protect the most amount of people, even if you have to sacrifice some people. Like you do what is the right call in any situation, whether or not it's easy or, the moral call or whatever. And so I thought he would have done that. I thought he would have taken out the Daleks that way. And so it did surprise me in the moment. However, in going back and editing it and watching it for this video, it actually does not surprise me anymore because it's literally just history repeating itself. He took out the Daleks and wiped out his people, wiped out an entire race in taking out the Daleks. Like that's what it cost him. And here we are again. He can wipe out the Daleks. He can take them out, but he's going to have to essentially, not fully, but basically wipe out the human race. Like he said, there are colonies, so it would survive in some way or carry on in some way. I forget how he worded it. But it's basically the same thing. And of course he wouldn't want to do that again. He has lived with that guilt and, I'm sure self-loathing and all kinds of stuff from making that decision. And so, yeah, it does not surprise me at all now that he would choose to not do that again. And I honestly thought that was a nice touch. One, it would have made the episode be over really quickly and we wouldn't have had some other really important things happen. But it was a nice touch to see that kind of come full circle. We learned about that experience in episode 6. And now here we are basically going through it again and he makes a different decision. So that was nice. So I know I talked about how I was a little disappointed that I didn't get an explanation of Bad Wolf in the previous episode, which was titled Bad Wolf. I still honestly don't feel like I really got that much of an explanation in this episode. I know that Rose was the Bad Wolf, but that still does not make sense to me. She said she scattered the words or whatever throughout space and time to lead her to that moment. But I don't get that. Like, and I have edited this video. I rewatched it tonight. I have listened to that speech, that monologue like several times, and I still don't really understand the deal with Bad Wolf. Like, why that name? Where did that come from? How did she scatter it across space and time? I don't get it. Why did Gwyneth think it was such a bad thing? Like, she was terrified when she said, the big bad wolf. All the companies were named that, Bad Wolf TV. The game network was also Bad Wolf. Like, the company that was doing the nuclear plant was Bad Wolf. Like, why were all those things named that? I don't know. I feel like I just did not get enough of an explanation about Bad Wolf. Like, there was so much lead up to Bad Wolf that I feel like they didn't spend all that much time actually explaining it. It was just like, oh, here's a one sentence thing and that's going to explain it away. And it didn't for me, at least. So if I just didn't understand that, please help me understand it. If you can explain it in a better way than they did on the show, I would appreciate that. Unless obviously it gets answered. I mean, it might get explained in the Christmas special. It might get explained in series 2. Maybe there'll be a conversation where they dive into it a little bit deeper, but if not, I would love an explanation if any of you have one. Okay. And so I'm actually going to switch up my last 2 notes here because I want to end on the thing I'm going to end on now. All right. Regeneration. This whole entire time, ever since we learned about the Time War and like all of his people being wiped out and all of that, I was confused as to why, and I'm still confused as to why the Time Lords didn't regenerate. Like, why do they all have to be wiped out when they can time travel? They can travel to other places in space. Like, they can regenerate. I'm confused as to how they had to all be wiped out. In my mind, I was like, oh, well, maybe that's not a Time Lord thing. Maybe it's just a specific Doctor thing. Maybe he has the ability to do that, but like not all Time Lords do. But we learned in this episode that they do, because he said it's a trick that Time Lords have or something like that. So it is something they can all do. So I'm now even more confused than ever because like I don't have that like, oh, well, maybe this is the answer, because it's not. So again, if it's not brought up later on, if it doesn't spoil anything, if it doesn't give anything away, why did they not just do that? Why were they wiped out when they seemingly had all of these other different options? Again, that's kind of just comes back to me wanting to know more about this whole Time War thing. All right. And then my final note, the kiss. I've been waiting for it since the pilot. Maybe not really since the pilot. I don't know. Definitely since episode 2. So I'm not sure if we're supposed to take it that like he had to kiss her in order to save her, like in order to get all of the stuff out of her and into him. But I don't think so. And again, I could be wrong. Like, you guys definitely know more about this than I do. But to me, it seemed more like I'm going to do this. I'm going to take this from her and it's going to kill me. So this is my last chance. So I'm going to kiss her. Not that he like gave that much thought to it previously. Not that he was like waiting for his opportunity. I just think it was a thing in the moment where he was like, I'm going to have to say goodbye to her. That was his reaction to it, was that he kissed her. And in so doing, took everything from her and took it into himself. So I loved it. I'm glad that we got that. I honestly didn't think that we would, because there hadn't really been much in the way of the Doctor's like sexuality or anything like that. I mean, he sort of had talked kind of a little bit when he was talking about Captain Jack, but like, it's not like he's like hitting on girls all the time or guys or anybody, and it's not like he's been super sexual with Rose. So I honestly didn't think that anything like that was going to come into play at any point in time in this series. Maybe if they had like multiple series together, but so anyways, it was a pleasant surprise to get that kiss. And I thoroughly enjoyed how it happened and when it happened and the importance of that moment. And I don't think that it was because, he had to in order to like get the stuff out of her. I think it was I'm going to do this and it's going to kill this version of me. And so, I'm going to do this while I can, sort of a thing. So I'm curious if you have other thoughts on that. All right. So my thoughts on this first series in general, it's no surprise. I loved it. There are definitely, honestly, there's only 13 episodes. There's not that many. And there are quite a few episodes that like I wouldn't watch on a rewatch. I wouldn't watch 4 or 5 or 7 or, well, I wouldn't watch 8, but not because I don't like 8, but because 8 is just too much for me. I wouldn't watch 11. So like there's a good chunk of episodes in this one that I wouldn't watch on a rewatch. But still overall, I loved the series. I loved this introduction to the show. I'm excited to see where it's going to go. I'm excited to see how it's going to evolve over time. I am sort of excited to see this new Doctor. Again, I will try to keep an open mind. But yeah, no, I'm definitely very glad that I started watching this show. Of all the shows that I am reacting to at the moment, this is by far my favorite. And I just very much want to binge it. Oh, so that is one other thing I wanted to address. I've had a lot of people say, like, take some breaks, don't overdo it, don't get burnt out, and, like maybe take some downtime between series. That's not me. I am not that person. I am I have a very obsessive personality. And when I like something, I go all in on it. And I am very, very, very much a binge watcher. Hence the fact that when I started watching Supernatural, it has 15 seasons, 327 episodes. They're 40 something minutes long. And I watched the entire thing in 1 month. It's literally like all I did for a month. And I wouldn't have it any other way. Like, I am definitely someone who would prefer to sit down and just spend all day just like watching episode after episode after episode. And so that is what I would love to do with Doctor Who. I don't have the time for it, unfortunately, at the moment. But that does mean that I do not anticipate taking breaks, because that's just not who I am. As long as I am interested in this show, I'm going to want to continue watching as fast as I can. So yeah, just to kind of address that a little bit. Breaks will probably not be happening unless it's just like something crazy is going on, and I need to for personal reasons or work reasons or something. But it will not be by my choice. I can promise you that, because literally I just want to sit and binge this show. And if I were not reacting to it, if I was just watching it on my own, I would probably be at least halfway through these series for NuWho by now, if not further. But it takes a lot more work, obviously, to do it when I have to like set up and record and all that stuff. So, yeah. Anyways, that is going to wrap up this video. It, of course, did go longer than I expected. I thought it was only going to be like 30 minutes long. It is what it is. So I'm excited to see where it goes. I'm excited to have you here. I'm grateful to have you here. Thank you so much for making this journey so special. That is part of what makes me want to continue doing it, especially in the form of a reaction and not just saying screw it and just going and binging it all on my own. You definitely make it worth it. So thank you, and hopefully I will see you in another video.